Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we got a special one for you. When we first launched Retro Rebound, we did an everything you need to know video on video game collecting in 2022. Well, here we are now in 2025, and I haven't really updated that guide in a while, but I want to now. The hobby's growing a lot. A lot of people are veering off of modern gaming for the various design decisions where AAA gaming's at, and they're looking back to the past to reconnect with the hobby. Either that, or you've come into some excess money and you want to regain what you had lost, which is where I was in that position back in 2020. I was like, I sold everything I love. Whatever it may be, first off, welcome to the hobby. And if you're already in the hobby, then hey, I'm here to try to help you out as best I can. I feel the number one rule for me when it comes to game collecting is keep it cozy. I'm not a big believer in turning it into a business model of buying, flipping, selling, filming myself at garage sales and trying to get the biggest deals while I'm in the middle of people's homes. That's not how I fly. I'm not trying to talk down on anyone, but that's my number one motto with all of this stuff. So all of my advice is going to come from that angle on how you can get your setup and things going nice and easy and keeping yourself in love with the gaming. So with all of that understood, a few before we begin tips. Number one, know your storage space. You see behind me, I have some rotating shelves here. I got these off of Office Depot. They're espresso rotating media shelves. You can look them up. They're really great, and they allow me to store a ton of games and keep my space nice and efficient. These things rotate as I showed in my full game collection video, and I've alphabetized my collection. I really recommend this as you grow out your collection across various consoles because it's just very easy when a friend's over, you want to show them a game or you want to play a game to just go and find it and pick it out. I've seen various collections in different homes where they do not alphabetize things and they have consoles and games buried in different parts of different shelves. These are the best things I think you can pick up. So definitely get yourself some standing rotating media shelves of some kind if you have the space for it. I also recommend prioritizing modern collections where you can, when it makes sense. Let your heart do some of the talking. Here's a good example for me. I have all of the Mega Man Battle Network games right here on Game Boy Advance, and then I have the first Battle Network here in this acrylic case. We'll talk about that in a moment. But then I also have Battle Network on the PS4. And the reality is that this collection has all the games I just picked up, and it's all just on one little shelf slot, right? It saves me a lot of space. But the thing I've had trouble with when it comes to letting go of these games is this is where I started regathering my collection. I got all of the Battle Network games. I was just grinding eBay, trying to find the missing pieces to my collection. Like I had the cartridge for one, but I needed to find the manual for Battle Network 3. That was really tough for me. So I just recommend consolidate where it makes sense, but let your heart do the talking there. For me, I'm just leaning towards keeping them all because I adore this series so much. But if you want to save space, if you live in, say, an apartment or whatever, and you're trying to just keep things nice and tidy, collections are a great place to go, especially if it's Capcom. They have amazing collections. Same thing goes for hardware. Hey, the original DS plays Game Boy Advance games. It also plays DS games. Granted, you lose out like on the Game Boy Advance, which plays things like Game Boy Color games, Game Boy games, and so on, but it's one less piece of hardware to keep track of where most of the great games live. Or you could do the new 3DS, which plays all of the DS games up until the new 3DS. So you have that whole library there on one small handheld device. Backwards compatible PS3s are expensive, but they are out there. They do exist. You could go on the PS Vita before Sony inevitably tears down the PSN and get a bunch of PS1 and PSP classics downloaded onto your system. There's a lot of ways to consolidate by just having those types of bits of hardware there and not bloating your collection, maybe like I arguably have. I also recommend, before we go any further, get the GameEye app. This is not a sponsorship. I've shouted them out many times before. GameEye has a great app that lets you scan your entire collection. For me, I looked at my app. I have over 800 video games. That's a lot. And it's funny because when I'm at like shops or cons, I'm like, oh man, I'm getting old. I can't remember all these games. Dude, I have over 800 games. I almost have 1,000 games. Of course, I'm not going to remember everything I have. And I don't expect anyone to. So scan them. There's a search bar on the top. When you're at a store, you pick up a game, you go, oh, I want this. Or, oh, this seems like a good deal. You can literally search it on your phone and know if you have it. The only upkeep you have to do is when you buy new games, scan them in, remove whatever you trade in, sell, get rid of, whatever it may be, and you're good to go. And your collection will always be perfect. Because I think the number one enemy I've seen with a lot of collectors is really organization. Like that is the number one thing. It's why it becomes overwhelming for people. And I get it. Like sitting right next to me is this haul that I shouted out from my brother-in-law. Like it's still sitting here because the one problem with how I do things is, okay, Maddie, you want to alphabetize things. So every time I go to slot something on the shelf, it's a project. I literally have to reorganize the entire shelf and move everything down and keep it in order, but it saves you so much time. So my way isn't perfect. It isn't bulletproof. It takes a little bit of extra time, but I think it's worth it. Okay, so those are kind of your building blocks. That's, to me, how you get started organizationally speaking. Now you have to make sure that your classic consoles are supported in your modern gaming setup. So there's a few ways you can do this. For example, Eon has a great HDMI adapter. This is for the Nintendo 64 specifically. They also did one for Xbox, but these are also very expensive. They're great, but very expensive. You do have more third-party options. I love this one from Old School. They're a great little side brand. I've never had issues with their things. The only problem is something like this is self-powered, and that's great. Something like this requires a little bit of a USB that has to get plugged into something else. So you have to find a power source nearby for this as well. But otherwise, once you have that hooked up, I use this for my GameCube. I've used this for my PS2. I have used this for many a thing. It's great. So this is a good way to make sure that your modern gaming setup is supporting your classic games. Also, a lot of people ask about the Retro Rebound setup. Maddie, how do you get these HD games showing up on a CRT? And sometimes that's just a fun way to play it, but there's also HD consoles like the Xbox 360 or the PS3. Maybe you don't have the composite cables for them. You only have the HDMI. All you have to do is go online and buy an HDMI to AV converter, and you'll be good to go. That's what I use there. There's a USB power thing similar to the Old School adapter here that you'll have to plug it in. Most times I just plug that into the console itself and it's good to go. And you'll literally see in almost all of our videos, there's a little USB plug hanging out of the console. That's the Retro Rebound secret. Like I said, no secrets here. I want you all to enjoy retro gaming as much as you can. Okay, I know this is what most of you tuned in for, and I'm sorry we had to have such a long wait until it, but let's talk about game buying. Just a little bit of ethical guidance, if you will. Don't get too deal hungry. Don't try to emulate your favorite YouTubers online. Again, I don't mean this as disrespect to those who go to garage sales, do a lot of game hunting, film their deals, that sort of thing. I enjoy that type of content. It's great and all, but what happens is retro gaming has become a lot of wheel and dealing. It's a lot of everyone's deal hungry. And now when I go to conventions, these shops are selling things for ridiculous prices because they're trying to set the new tone on prices. What you'll notice is when games go viral or they gain some sort of traction, or honestly, if a storefront just feels like moving up the price, what happens is retro gaming is a lot of follow the leader. Oh, you moved up your game price to $100. I'm going to do that too. And suddenly, out of nowhere, we have this brand new price point that exists for these games. That has encouraged, I think, a lot of people to go out there and try to scam people out of their shoes on both ends of the spectrum. But I just encourage people to always make the smart deal. You don't always have to hunt down for the perfect deal and do what a lot of YouTubers do, which is like, oh my God, like I'm guilty as charged. My brother-in-law hooked me up, got that huge stack of games I just showed you for $50. That's a really rare thing, and you shouldn't try to make it the norm. Like in all my years of collecting and buying games, that's the first time someone's ever so graciously hooked me up. So don't go around expecting that to be the case. Moving on from that, you're shopping now. Okay, you got money in hand. What do? I always recommend start local. Just Google video game shops near me and just put your search location on and see where it leads you. I think number one, it's really fun to go out and see your local shops, support those businesses. There's not a ton of them. It's amazing that they still exist in today's gaming climate. So I always recommend supporting locally first. Just before you go on eBay, before you go on Mercari, all those other great options there, definitely go and check out your local shops. Not only because it's great to support the local business, I also think it's really important because you'll get better deals there sometimes. Oftentimes these shops use cash. Oftentimes these shops will cut special deals for you to help you out or just get your deal across the finish line. Like this has happened to me numerous times, by the way, I should clarify, with people who don't know who I am. You know, I have a shop that does like 10% off if you're a member there. It's really great. They're always rotating out their stock. So just getting 10% off of what is typically below market value offering is why I shop locally first. It's a little bit of a drive, but I think it's totally worth it. So that's why I recommend that first. There's obviously flea markets. highly recommend those as well. I've done a lot of game hunting there. That's where you can get into your wheel and deal bag because everyone there is trying to do the same thing. I think it's a little more permittable there. What I recommend doing is just picking up a bundle of games and offering like a single value for them all. That's fair, by the way. A lot of people try to get really bold. I remember being at a Long Island Gaming Expo and listening to someone offer a ridiculous price for a complete box Pokemon Blue. So yeah, don't try to be disrespectful to the seller's knowledge. Just try to give something fair where you both win, because especially with cash deals, this is money that undoubtedly they pocket. There's probably no taxes to it at all. So they're happy to take your cash at a little bit of a discount. You just have to be a little bit respectful about it. I also recommend shopping in pieces. So an example would be here, as someone who does a GameStop collecting series as a joke, I got really good cover art for Dragon Ball Z Burst Limit. I also have the disc right here, and this disc also has the DVD, the bonus disc that this comes with. So it's like, okay, I'm kind of hooked up. Now, I'm not in a good spot because I'm out of this, but what I would recommend you doing is buying for a few systems that you're planning to collect for a sports game lot. Yes, really. Buy a clean sports game lot, because what you'll do is you'll store in a closet, kind of just forget it games. And when you need to do a case swap, or you get something where it's a little bit cheap, but you have the pieces you need, you can put this stuff together. Once I put this together here, I'll have Dragon Ball Z Burst Limit with the bonus disc, with the disc of the game itself, and some great cover art. I will just need my hands on a manual, which can just aid in saving you money long-term. Also, I think some games go up in value when they're cleaner. You'll see games that are just decreased in value. It's typically tough with like cardboard games. You know, I was holding up some of these Mega Man games here, and some of these are kind of beaten up, you know, a little bit of tear at the flaps on the end. But when it comes to games like Dragon Ball Z Burst Limit, all of those 360 cases are the same. So you just need any sports game, take that case, throw out the rest, and then you can throw in Burst Limit there, and you just have to hunt down the manual. So just keep those offhand to swap, keep your collection clean, that sort of thing. I also recommend for expensive pieces, acrylic cases. So what you see here is Pokemon Heart Gold. This does come with the Pokewalker as one of my prizes in my collection. And then Battle Network 1, right? Like this is in stupid good condition, and I intend to keep it that way. So I wanted to put the highest amount of protection. But what you'll notice is there's a difference between Battle Network 1 and Battle Network 6, which is here in this kind of, you can hear it rattling around a little bit. This is in a little bit of a plastic case. Still protective, still gonna keep your games in good health, but not as much as like this acrylic case right here. So the acrylic cases naturally go for a little bit more. So I recommend, just in case your most prized possessions with those. Like one of the games I wanna hunt down at some point is Pokemon Stadium Complete in Box. I really want that. If I could get that, I would definitely buy an acrylic box for it to sit within, because I would be terrified of the corners wearing down. It allows you to transport them a little bit easier. So when I was moving, these I felt really safe with. And honestly, these I did move with as well, these plastic cases, and they were great too. None of my games got damaged. The only thing is that these acrylic cases are really good for the top-down pressure, right? Because now nothing's affecting the box art whatsoever as I'm squeezing on this, where, of course, I really don't need to show it without destroying the game, but you can see this has a lot of give to it. So just keep that sort of stuff in mind when you are collecting prized possessions, especially cardboard games, N64, Game Boy Advance. You want to protect these as best you can. There are cases online. If you don't care about the quote complete box experience is what we call it here. If you don't care about all this stuff, that's totally cool. More power to you. There are fun fan-made cases that people will make for like Nintendo 64, and they're really awesome and allow you to shelve these games where all you really need to do is hunt down the cart, which is a lot cheaper. So there's ways to do it if you don't care about doing it the traditional way, which if you don't, I almost encourage that behavior, because I'm so obsessed with complete in box that sometimes it derails me from otherwise just getting a game I care about. One of my last pieces of advice as we wrap this up is for limited run stuff. So behind me here, Knights of the Old Republic Master Edition. This is my favorite game of all time. Right behind that, you see KOTOR 2 Master Edition, my second favorite game of all time. I adore these games so much. These were $200. They have already jumped to like $300 and continue to go up. Here's another popular limited run item in the Grimoire editions for Persona 3 and Persona 4. This is one that I think was like $70, and now these combine for about $300 together. And this is not me collection flexing. These are sealed. This is me plainly saying to you that yes, the shipping times are awful. Yes, these do get very pricey, but I have never once regretted my purchase when I got it, because once I got it, the price has already doubled. So my advice to you is that it's best to be early for these sorts of things. It's best to invest while the price is quite literally at its lowest. Limited Run has figured out a lot of their stock issues where they used to run out immediately. And so a lot of the older Limited Run stuff goes for a ton of money nowadays. Things still go for a very big price tag, but if you want to save money in the long run and you see Limited Run doing a limited run of something that you care about, it might be best to just jump on it right away. Unless, asterisk here, barring these sorts of things here, I do a lot of my limited run copy shopping at PAX East. I go to PAX East every year. Limited Run always has a booth, and it's there. I'll go in there and I'll pick up a ton of single copies of games. I'll never get something quite like this. These sorts of things usually sell out really quickly, especially at conventions. However, when it comes to singular copies of games, like, oh, I picked up Curse to Golf on Switch. That's another limited run they did. Pentiment on Switch, pick that up. You know, these sorts of things that you can get, those single copies, you could wait on those. You'll still pay the full $40, $50 price that you usually do with limited run, but you don't have to get those immediately. But if it's a kind of special edition like this or the master edition, it's tougher to find. So you definitely want to jump on those as soon as you can. Now, if you don't support limited run, I get that. A lot of people don't, and I respect that. I think their quality is fantastic. As a collector, I really appreciate it, especially the effort they go to with the manuals, a little collectible. So they'll always have my business. I kind of just accept that the shipping times they do are awful. And I do have, if anything, a big issue with like, oh, they did a collector's edition for Shredder's Revenge like 3 times now, because that game got kind of like re-released once or twice. It's just like the ridiculous part about it. But otherwise, I enjoyed their products, but it's more so just to say, if you're planning on shopping there, it's better to get in early when it gets announced, put in your pre-order, and then wait an eternity for it to arrive. Otherwise, that's really it. I mean, that's all you need to know. It's pretty simple from there, but those are my tips on keeping things organized, keeping things, you know, modern in your collection while still managing to be able to play these classic games. Other little tidbits, just keep in mind things like FPS boost. Look into where games are best played. I think that's really important. So if I'm ever to play Final Fantasy 13 as a trilogy again, unless it gets remastered and re-released, which I hope it does, then, you know, go ahead and fire it up on the Xbox Series X if you have one, because it's got FPS boost over there and the visuals look incredible. So it's immaculate over on that system, and it looks and runs and feels like a modern game in a lot of ways. So that's the wonderful thing about combining retro gaming with modern gaming. Also, keep in mind PlayStation's PlayStation Plus service. They have platinum trophies. If you care about that stuff, they're always updating it. Like, they just put in the entire Sly trilogy recently there. There's some Jack and Daxter games in there now. It's just popping off over there. So if you care about these older games and playing them in a new, unique way with platinum trophies, you could do that there. And then, of course, Nintendo Switch has the Switch Online service. For me, I just like to own these things. I care about having them officially in my collection. I don't like to be at the mercy of a digital subscription service, which like we saw with Nintendo's Virtual Shop, these games can just go away tomorrow, and it's really sad. So yeah, just my thoughts overall on collecting in 2025. Hopefully this helps. If you all have any tips for me that maybe I overlooked, or tips for anyone else out there, then please leave them down below. Looking forward to reading them. Other than that, happy hunting. Let me know some game pickups you're making in 2025, and I'll catch you all in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.